Hey friends, I'm Lindsay Morgan, Nonprofit Resource Specialist at the Community Resource EnVision Center. But my friends call me Birdie, and you can too. Welcome to A Little Birdie Told Me, formerly known as the EnVision Center News Podcast. Around here, we share the good stuff happening in North Idaho nonprofits and philanthropy, the stories behind the work, the people making it happen, and the little things I'm hearing that are making a big difference in our community. So stay tuned for a bird's eye view of the true heart of our community. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
It's really exciting to have you here to talk about yourself and your journey a little bit, and the Pro Voice project that we have in Sandpoint. So if you don't mind just starting us off by introducing yourself.
Yeah, so I am Jen Jackson Quintano, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Pro Voice project. We're based here in Sandpoint, and we are an organization that tries to combat stigma related to abortion and reproductive health care in our bodies through storytelling and community conversations, bringing people together, getting people to feel comfortable being vulnerable and sharing stories that maybe previously felt unspeakable, and showing that it's possible to share these stories, that there's catharsis in sharing these stories, and that we build community when we get vulnerable like that and share stories. So we've been doing this. Our first event was January of 23. So coming up on 4 years now.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I love the aspect of storytelling, really just working in, this is going to be super general, but like working in nonprofits, period. It is so important with the storytelling to really help the community figure out what mission you're on. So what a great way to make this a approachable subject. And maybe that's a bold thing for me to say, but
No, it's exactly it. Stories are really important to me. My background is in writing and thus in storytelling. And so when this issue came up, when the Dobbs decision happened and we here in Idaho lost access to abortion care, I just had this sense that I wanted to do something, but it is such a fraught topic in certain spaces, and especially in Idaho. It's difficult to talk about, and it can be an issue that can kind of trigger people, for or against. They have strong opinions, and when you lead with your opinions, it tends to cause someone who may be on the other side of the issue to kind of shut down or to, respond with their differing opinions, and it keeps us kind of in this space where we're, on opposite sides of this divide on an issue. But storytelling is so different. Storytelling is disarming. It's something that can't be refuted. You have your own experience. You have the things that happened. You have your emotional response to what happened, and you have your vulnerability in sharing that. And that often tends to open doors instead of close them. Most people aren't going to argue with your personal story,
Sure, yeah.
And so it's been a really powerful way to talk about this issue and to help people have the tools and the courage to talk about it instead of feeling like they need to go out and talk about why abortion is important, and have facts and figures and, to persuade others. All you have to have is a story, whether it's your story of having an abortion or, walking with someone else through their journey and maybe what you've personally learned from that. Or maybe it's, here in Idaho, a lot of us have lost OBGYNs. And part of their reason for leaving is restrictive laws. And so people have stories about not being able to access basic care, not being able to birth their babies in Sandpoint, having to go to Coeur d'Alene or to Newport for that. And so there's just so many stories, so many experiences that we have to talk about. And they tend to bring us together when we share stories instead of pushing us further apart.
That makes me really happy to hear, because I was just going to say, is that what you have found over this time?
Yeah, it's been pretty remarkable. I mean, I had the sense, in my heart in the beginning, like, I think stories are the way to move forward with this, to get people to start talking. To back up a little bit, part of what brings me to this is I had a rather fraught decade in my 20s. Where there were a lot of instances where it felt like my body wasn't mine to make decisions about. I didn't feel a lot of agency. And I had a lot of shame around events that happened in my 20s. And it just really felt like I couldn't talk about it. Felt like I was somehow at fault for events that happened. And I finally come to realize that shame was an impediment to me connecting with others, to me healing, to me feeling a sense of acceptance and understanding the forces that were really at play. So, coming to terms with my own story and combating shame in my own personal experience has been enormously powerful. So that's why I had the idea to bring that opportunity to others.
Okay.
And so our first event happened here in Sandpoint, and I collected stories from our community. We had 15 people submit stories about their abortion experiences in the past. And we collected some performers, and at the Heartwood Center, we had these performers share these stories, these really personal stories, really moving stories. And a lot of people sent in their stories anonymously. They were afraid to have their names attached to it. They didn't know if there would be blowback from that or how they would be received. And what we found was, first of all, almost 200 people from the community came out to this performance, which was incredible.
Yeah.
The people who shared their stories almost uniformly, I've heard from almost all of them. And they all have talked about like this sense of release, like, oh my gosh, I've held this story for 40 years. I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. And then I shared it, and then I had it performed, saw it performed, and I just feel released from this. And now I can share this with my daughter or my husband. Or I had one woman share with me, like, yeah, I never told anyone, and now I just told our state senator my story because I thought it was important for him to know what my experience was. So it's really released the people who have shared. And then the people in the audience who bear witness to the stories and receive, I hear from a lot of audience members who feel like, oh my gosh, I felt my story, was reflected on the stage. I feel like I'm not alone anymore.
Right.
I feel like this isn't an unspeakable thing anymore. Or happens a lot after a performance, I'll run into someone at the grocery store or whatever, and they'll come up to me and say, wow, that was really powerful, and I have my own story. Can I share it with you? So there have been numerous instances of like receiving someone's story, which is such a privilege in like the frozen food aisle,
Yeah. Not where you'd expect it,
not
right?
Where you would expect it, but I just feel like I keep using the word vulnerability, but I feel like that's such an important part of it because vulnerability begets vulnerability. If I can open and share with you, it might inspire you to do the same, or you might see yourself in my story and feel inclined to share a bit of yours that maybe hasn't felt shareable. So, yeah, there's been a lot of great ripple effects from the programming that we've put on.
That's really, really inspiring in the way where you took your own personal journey and through the healing process found what worked for you and try to reflect that moving forward for others. And you're building community that way. I think that's really great. And it seems like really the mission in practice. Actually, speaking of, could you explain maybe what the Pro Voice project looks like in practice. How does the programming work?
Yeah, it's really expanded since the beginning. So my initial plan with this was one stage performance in Sandpoint to spark a conversation, and then I would be done, and the real activist would step in and do their magic. And, this was like just my little contribution, and then I'd go back to my real life or whatever.
Right.
And instead, we had this one performance in Sandpoint. It was really powerful. And there were several people in the audience from Boise who said, wow, we would love to bring this to our community. And so we brought it to Boise, and then people in Moscow were like, we want to bring it here. And I think we've done stage performances in, I want to say 18 stage performances in Idaho alone. And then we've done it beyond Idaho as well. Our stage performances started out with us. The model was to collect stories locally, maybe through a writing workshop. I lead writing workshops called Reproductive Rights, WRIT.
Very clever.
Yes. And
that.
bring people together and just create like a container, a safe space to explore your story. You don't have to share it in the room if you don't want, but just to put words to paper and kind of befriend your story and figure out what it's all about and maybe go deeper with it. A lot of people who have been a part of these workshops have shared their stories with the Pro Voice Project. We like to, when possible, populate a script with local stories because we understand the experiences of people in Boise are going to be different than people in the Sun Valley area, and it's going to be different than in North Idaho. So we'll collect local stories. We'll work with a local playwright, director, local performers to put together a production. So it's really a community-driven thing. It's not my intention to parachute into any community in Idaho and say, I know what's best for you. I don't. I live in Sandpoint. I have a sense for what Sandpoint wants or needs, but I don't claim to know what other communities want. So it's been really great to assemble local volunteers and hear what their feelings are about the kind of conversation that's needed in their community. So we've put on these stage performances, and we've done the writing workshops. We also, in the wake of labor and delivery closing here in Sandpoint, a group of volunteers came together, and we decided to look at, the systemic barriers to reproductive healthcare access. Like when Bonner General sent out their press release, they referenced the laws in Idaho as part of the reason why labor and delivery closed. But there were a host of other reasons that they listed, and we really wanted to get into that. Like, the laws are problematic, but so is how we undervalue women's health care, and it's not compensated to the same level that healthcare for men is. That's a problem. Shame and stigma are a problem. Those are barriers to people accessing care. And so we put together this whole exhibit, all these panels to have up as a display. It's called Worth of a Woman. And an amazing group of about a dozen volunteers here locally helped create it. And it's been up in several areas around Sandpoint. It's been up at the library and Bluebird Bakery and Matchwood, and it's since gone on to travel the state. So we have 2 copies in circulation. We often have guest speakers come, professors, writers, and we can do facilitated community conversations, just trying to bring people together to talk about reproductive health care, which is not something we tend to talk about in community often, but I think there's room to be talking about it. So we've got that traveling. We've also made some short documentary films with some Idaho storytellers who have felt comfortable being on camera and sharing their stories about not being able to access the care that they needed here in Idaho and having to travel out of state. And then we do watch parties with those. We'll bring those films to someone's living room, and they can invite their book club or, their spin class or their neighbors, and we can have a conversation about those films. So that's a sampling of the programming that we have, but it's really at the heart. It's about building community and sharing in community and being seen and seeing one another.
Absolutely. So what would you say is the biggest misconception about either what you do or just about women's healthcare rights?
Yeah, gosh. Well, as far as like a misconception about what I do, I think people tend to think that if I'm working in the realm of abortion rights, anything related to abortion, that it must be really dangerous work.
Sure.
And it's not.
Okay.
We've had so many, like scores of events around the state. We've had protesters at one, and they were lovely.
Okay.
And they did not block access, and they prayed and sang quietly off to the side of the door, and we brought them treats, and it was, we were able to cohabitate in that space. Otherwise, all of our events have gone off without a hitch. I've not been threatened or anything. I think because this isn't about beating people over the head with an idea, it's about us coming together and just sharing what our experiences have been. There's more safety and more community in this work than people tend to initially think. So that's one thing. And I always say, like, if I'm able to do this for years and speak very publicly about abortion as an experience and access and do that safely, there's a lot of room for the average person to talk about it with their neighbors or their family members and to not be fearful about that. Because I think that's one of the things we come up against, especially in North Idaho. If you have a sense that your view is not the dominant view, you tend to kind of keep it to yourself because there's a fear of being ostracized or not being welcome in the community, or maybe something bad is going to happen.
Sure.
And I think this has been really powerful for me and for others to see that it's okay to speak up and it's okay to share our stories and talk about our experiences. And in building the courage to do that, we end up building community too. So, and then as far as misconceptions around reproductive health care, there are stereotypes about who is accessing abortion and why they're doing it. And often those stereotypes are not very generous, don't take a very generous view of women and why they might need an abortion. And so many of the stories that I've come across are women who are already mothers, and have made a decision about how many children they can take care of, and something happens and they get pregnant, and it's a hard decision. But, this is not, there's a misconception about people being really irresponsible, and this is the backstop for that. And, there is just such a broad array of reasons why someone might need to access abortion care. And abortion care is a part of reproductive health care. It's something that we've siloed as separate from. It's like its own little thing that we put in its own clinics. And really, it's an essential part of the whole picture. I've seen that with so many women who had wanted pregnancies and something went wrong. And the care that they need in that moment is to end the pregnancy. And you can't separate that from the rest of reproductive health care. And you can't look at one reproductive health care experience and say that's emblematic of it all. The cool thing about storytelling is you get to see so much nuance. There is a whole spectrum of experience. And so to lean on stereotypes it's not a service to anyone. And, we have a story library on our website, and I would just welcome anyone to go on our website, theprovoiceproject.com, and read through that story library, and you'll understand humans were so complex, and we all have our own experiences, our own backgrounds that we bring to any given situation. And that is true for the abortion experience. You can't sum it up in one little soundbite.
Do you think that that is what's happening whenever there's, conflict with the ideas, is that they're not a person may not be aware of or curious enough to learn the whole spectrum instead of just, like you say, the really strong stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're finding. So when people are more curious, doesn't mean they have to agree, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not the same.
You don't have to listen to someone's story and commit to having your mind changed by that story.
Sure. Okay.
But
yeah.
if you can commit to just being open and hearing it and understanding someone's rationale or the factors in play in someone's life, if like there is just a moment of heart opening and maybe empathy or compassion for someone's experience, I feel like that's a win, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I don't necessarily want to go out there and be like, everyone, you all must change your opinions on this. You know, I just want people to connect and to listen to one another. And there have been events that we've held where the room has been pretty mixed between people who support abortion access and people who don't. And after having conversation, maybe after showing one of our films, people have come away, you know, we'll have conversation afterwards and it'll last for hours. And people will say things like, okay, I still don't think I would ever have an abortion, but I understand why in that instance, you know, the individual in that film, I understand why she made that decision. That's amazing.
That is
right?
amazing. Yes.
So it's conversations like that. And also holding space for, in those same rooms, someone might say, you know, well, I was in a situation where I felt like the doctor, you know, really pressured my daughter to make a decision about her pregnancy that I didn't agree with. And it's like, well, let's hold space for that too. I want to hear your story too. Like, all of these stories are valid. I'm not like just selecting, I'm not curating like the best abortion stories. You know, we all have stories that are valid, and I just want us to open to one another and acknowledge that we come to this with different backgrounds and like just hold space for one another in the decisions that we make. And when we can do that, then there is not that stigma and there is not that shame, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what do you think we can benefit as a community, as a whole, when we do listen to each other's stories?
Yeah. We're so defined right now by kind of being siloed in our own belief systems and in communities, whether it's online or in real life, of like-minded individuals. And so there's like this canyon that kind of sits between, you know, those with our beliefs and people who have other beliefs, and we'll never mix. And these people, they go to that restaurant, but we go to this. Like, we figured out so many ways to keep ourselves separate from one another. And I just feel like storytelling, whether it is about reproductive health care or anything, I feel like that's something that can help bring us together. It just brings more complexity and opportunity for connection and empathy, like I mentioned before. I really do find it to be healing, not just for individuals, but for communities. And would love to see, you know, more opportunities for storytelling in communities, whatever the issue, because I think there's a lot there that can be really helpful.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And it seems like, you know, based off what you're saying and really just you've seen it in practice, how more open and understanding communities are with one another, the stronger that community could be, right? And maybe happier or healthier or both, right?
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah. I'm out here holding out for world peace myself. So,
and I like, let's be clear, like, storytelling is not going to save the world, but
it
is,
might.
I mean, at a
way.
scale, maybe, yes. But the cool thing about this, and the cool thing about like the organizing that I've been doing, is anyone can do it. You know, you don't need a special degree or like a resume that, you know, in community organizing or something. Like, what I was doing before I started this organization, I was an arborist here in Sandpoint. I was running a chainsaw, right? So I didn't have a special skill for abortion rights organizing. I was just like feeding trees into a chipper, So if I can do this work, anyone can do this work, if they are able to make time and space for it, if they have passion for it. It can be as simple as pulling your family together instead of having it be awkward and silent at the dinner table because there's all things you're not saying because maybe you're coming from different perspectives. Like, what's something that you can share that is like a little bit more vulnerable, shares a bit of your experience that might, elucidate why you believe one thing or another. Like, we can do this in our families. We can do this in our neighborhoods. It's accessible to all of us. So that's why I'm really excited about it. You know? I don't want to portray this like rose-colored glasses, like just share stories and everything's going to be better, but it doesn't hurt,
Yeah, right.
And if each of us is doing this on whatever the issue, it can only help improve matters.
Yeah, you're right, I think. I really do think that. I think that we have seen over time that when people harbor shame or guilt or some sort of a conflict within themselves and in the form of a story, right, because it is their own, that it affects them. It hurts them. And people that are hurt, it can spread almost, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of a simple way of saying that healed people have a better chance of building a healing community. And just seeing that in someone and allowing someone, that can just go so far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're working on now, we've been putting on performances that highlight physician stories. So speaking of healing, physicians are in the practice of healing, right? But those who are working in obstetrics in Idaho right now, a lot of them are struggling mightily with the laws as they are because they feel rather constrained in their ability to treat complex pregnancies and, certain cases that come their way that they once had the toolkit to offer compassionate care and now they don't have that and they're having to send patients elsewhere. And so we find that a number of our doctors now who are in the practice of healing maybe need a little healing themselves and need to be seen and understood in this particular environment in Idaho right now. So we have collected a bunch of physician stories, physicians who have left to practice elsewhere, those who have stayed and feel like it's really important to continue to practice in their communities. And so we're putting these stories into a performance. We've put it on in probably 4 different venues so far, but we're going to do a bunch of it this fall. I think 6 different Idaho towns are going to host this particular script that shares physician stories and what it's like to work on the front lines in a state that has banned certain forms of reproductive health care. I think it's been healing to the physicians to share their stories and to hear stories from others and understand that they're not alone in this. And I think it's also been healing in that prior to creating this production, we would hear from people like, well, gosh, why aren't doctors doing more? Why don't they just put their license on the line and practice the way they've been trained to practice? Like, they need to try harder,
Sure.
Or you hear from, like, the doctors are, like, bad people, they just want to provide abortion willy-nilly and, good riddance to the ones who are leaving. We have these narratives that are kind of positioning physicians as the bad guys. And in the stories that we've collected, we're able to bring nuance to their experience and bring understanding and compassion for their experience. And in small towns like Sandpoint, doctors are a part of our community too.
Yeah, you're right.
So understanding their experience is not separate from the work of community building. We see our physicians on the soccer field and at the grocery store. And so I'm really excited to continue to bring these stories to more communities around the state later this year.
Yeah. I mean, that leads me to my next question, which is what is on the horizon?
Oh my gosh, we have so much programming coming up. Like, hold on to
Get
your
ready.
seat. Let's see. So this Friday, we
Oh.
have an event coming up in Coeur d'Alene, and it's called Speak Easier.
Mm.
And we will have 5 individuals sharing their stories live in person from a stage. And they'll each have 5 minutes to share a bit of their story, whether it's a story about abortion or how they came to this issue to advocate for reproductive rights, or what they've found about speaking up on this issue. They will share their stories, and then the next part of the evening is where the storytellers will drop down into the audience and become living books. So people can come up and quote, I'm doing the air quotes. Those of you just listening,
Yeah.
you can't see it. They can read these
Okay.
experiences, do a closer reading, ask more questions, delve deeper into it. And so it can be an interactive storytelling experience. And we actually put a version of this on in Seattle in February, and it was really beautiful. It was really, really cool. People from all different ideological backgrounds sharing their stories. And so we have that happening Friday in Coeur d'Alene. And then on August 20th, we have a virtual webinar that's happening. Anyone statewide can tune in. And we've got 3 social justice activists, longtime social justice activists. They're from the National Council of Elders.
Okay.
Loretta Ross and Suzanne Farr. And Shay Howell, and they live in different points around the country. They are going to Zoom in and share what it means to practice courage in the face of fear. That is the title of the event, Courage in the Face of Fear.
Wow.
And just talking about their experiences over the decades of feeling fearful, speaking up, advocating for an issue, but how they faced that fear and sat with that fear and spoke up anyway. And it feels like that's a valuable conversation to have in Idaho around social justice issues. And it feels scary to speak up, but gosh, can we speak up? Do some of us have the privilege to make it easier to speak up? So that will be happening on the 20th. Here in Sandpoint, we are hosting a watch party for that at the Methodist Church.
Okay.
And there will be Q&A as a part of it. And after the Zoom is over, we can have a discussion as a community about it. Then we're having this stage production blitz for a month. Starting in Sandpoint, September 25th, we'll do the Physician Story stage production. It's called Good Faith Medical Judgment. So that will happen in Sandpoint on September 26th, Coeur d'Alene on Sandpoint September 25th, Coeur d'Alene September 26th. Then we will have it in Moscow on, gosh, it's all on our website. I'm having a hard, there's so many dates.
Just impressed of how many things you're keeping straight right now.
Yeah, I think, okay, so then Salmon, Idaho is happening October 17th. Moscow is October 22nd. Haley is October 24th. Idaho Falls is October 25th. So, yeah, so all over the state, anyone has an opportunity to go check out this this stage production. Yeah, so lots of programming coming up, lots of opportunity for people to get involved.
Yeah, it does sound like that. So you mentioned going to your website, and my question would be, if anybody wants to get involved some way, do you need volunteers or board members or anything like that?
We can always use volunteers. Absolutely. That is great. From helping the organization with basic organizing stuff to, hosting events in your living room. Maybe people want to host a conversation or a film viewing, or we're asking people to host watch parties for the Courage in the Face of Fear event. So there are opportunities to contact us on the website to inquire about volunteering. Of course, donations are great. We're always eager to hear people's stories, and we have a story submission form on the website.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we love to hear stories about any experience of reproductive health care. I mean, it's all on the table here in Idaho because there are a lot of different ways that it can be fraught to access care. So we love for people to submit stories. Yeah.
This might seem like a silly question, but are you just getting... Do you just receive stories from women, or do you ever receive stories from men?
This is not a silly question.
Okay,
this is an
good.
excellent question. This is why you do what you do here.
Okay, great.
Yeah. 98% of the stories are from women. Yeah.
Naturally.
Naturally.
Right?
And part of... So we did have one individual who submitted his story. And he shared with me, it was really helpful that he shared this. He wrote it, and before he sent it to the Pro Voice Project, he ran it by a couple women friends of his to get their take, to make sure it was okay. One friend said, "This is amazing. I'm so grateful that you put pen to paper and recorded your experience. This is really powerful. It's really important for me to hear it." The other friend said, "How dare you?
Oh.
This is not your story to tell." And when he went ahead and sent it in anyway, but he said, "I think this is part of why you're not hearing from more men. There are some men who just don't consider this their issue at all. But for those who do and who have maybe been a part of an abortion experience, there's a hesitancy because, oh, is this my story to tell? Or some women are gatekeeping and saying, no, this isn't your story." And so he just felt like that was important to know, why some men might feel reticent to share their experience. We need more stories from men, you know, 100%. We would love to hear more. And it's so important to hear, when I talked about, all of the stories and how much nuance they add to the conversation around this experience. We need men's voices to add that layer of nuance and to know what it's like to accompany someone or, whatever their experience of it is.
Sure.
So, yeah, we would love to hear from men. And I understand it can feel difficult. Or for some, it just feels like, well, this is a women's issue. And it's not a women's issue because women never come to this by themselves.
Yes, fair enough.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I think that's kind of what I was asking without thinking that was what I was asking, is this affects men too.
It does.
Yeah.
It absolutely affects men. Men are a part of the equation. Men have an experience. I'm sure they have a story or emotional content. We need to be hearing that. It needs to be a conversation, not just in rooms of women, but in rooms of everyone. We are all affected by this.
It's a human issue.
Yeah, it's a human issue. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. I like that. I like how you put that. Okay. So I have one more question, really. What brings you hope for this community that you're serving?
Yeah, it's, anytime that I'm out in the community and getting to connect deeply with someone, that is, it's really powerful. It's such a gift. And the fact that people are willing to open up to me and to one another and to be truthful and to be brave and seeing that happen again and again and again, that gives me hope. It gives me hope to see the conversation change around this, where, when we first started, people wouldn't say the A word. It just felt taboo to even say the word.
Sure.
And I feel like there's more comfort now saying the word and talking about our reproductive health care experiences. So I've definitely seen a shift over the years in where that conversation is at. So that gives me hope. It's if we can make progress like this in 3 or 4 years, what's going to happen moving forward? So that's it. But really, it's the individual encounters. It's talking with individuals and connecting and just seeing how, this is going to sound corny, but
maybe not.
There hasn't been an Idaho community that I've gone into to do an event where I haven't been like, oh, wow, this is a really great community. Look at how people are coming together, Mm-hmm. And the headlines may tell you a different story about Idaho, like national news outlets like to report on us as like the poster child for whatever extreme crazy thing.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm like, yeah, we should probably report on that. But I just feel like there's a depth and a generosity to our communities here that doesn't get talked about, and people watching out for one another, and just opportunities for connection that give me a lot of hope. We're not necessarily what the clickbait says about us.
Oh, you
and
don't say.
Yeah,
right?
Imagine that.
I know.
And so I'm just grateful to be able to travel the state and like test that hypothesis and be like, yep, this is great too, so that gives me hope. Yeah.
That's really nice to hear, actually. Everything that you've talked about today is very inspiring in the ways that you have taken something that is personal and made it a healing tool for others. And I just appreciate you doing that work and holding space for those stories and those experiences for the betterment of everyone. You're doing it in such a graceful way, it seems like. And that's something that I never get tired of seeing in our communities. So thank you for doing that work. And specifically, thank you for being here with me today.
Of course. Thank you. This has been a treat.
Oh, good. Well, friends, thanks for listening. I'll be back soon with more of the good news. But in the meantime, you can keep up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and at crecIdaho.com. Until next time.